Have you ever blocked out 30 minutes for a task that somehow swallowed your entire afternoon? I think we've all been there. So, even though we're trained to manage our time, to block it, protect it, schedule it, I think time is only one side of that equation. The other side is complexity, and it's important to acknowledge both because capacity means our work is doable. So as much as I know we talk about the work a bit, I think we also need to talk about the complexity of the work. Because if we don't get clear on the complexity, our calendar buries us. And then that's where things get messy. It's hard to recover. And this is where burnout creeps in. So we'll spend the next 8 minutes or so on a framework to help make your work doable in the day-to-day and durable for the long run. So let's meet the estimation animals. If you go deeper into Agile, you'll find there are multiple ways to work estimation. I use this more compressed version as it helps my clients, most of whom are not that familiar with Agile, get comfortable with the idea of estimation quickly, and also it helps me stay on track. You'll see I use four animals, the mouse, small and simple, a snake, looks small but unravels fast, a horse for those fast and coordinated efforts, and then the elephant, big, slow, process heavy. We'll talk about each of these in a little more detail, but one point I think that we need to talk about is that I don't think burnout typically comes from the elephants. We're pretty good at recognizing those, although we do inadvertently take on more than one elephant at a time sometimes. So in a couple minutes, I'll show you how to surface that as well. Burnout, I think, comes more often from misjudged snakes, and we'll talk about how to spot those and how to avoid those. So your mouse, you'll see the pieces that make up the mouse, very concrete. This looks like a donor thank you email, for example. You'll notice I skipped the snake. We're going to come back to that in just a bit. So here's the horse. Horses are typically known, repeated efforts. This will look like year-end giving, follows kind of within these four buckets of ideas for a horse. Elephants. Elephants require a lot more effort across multiple months, often will cross over fiscal years. This looks like a full strategic plan or a capital campaign for your organization, except there is one time when, even though it's not months of effort or crosses over a fiscal year, that you might have an elephant that you weren't expecting, and that's if it's the first time you've taken on a large effort. So say you're going to write your first federal grant. I think that's an elephant because you've not yet built the internal processes for your organization or are comfortable with that process. How to spot a snake. So snakes are tricky. They're sneaky. They often look like a mouse at first glance, but then they unravel and then they have a nasty bite. So we're going to be on the lookout for snakes. And when you see snakes typically fall into these categories, and a very big identifier for a snake is it often starts with the word just. We'll just follow. Let's just do this one thing. So next I created this capacity calendar. Actually, I created the capacity calendar first when I was director of advancement for a $40 million organization to get a handle on why in the middle of summer we were so slammed, even though in January everyone talked about how slow the summer would be. And so I now use this with my clients to get clarity on their work. And your capacity calendar isn't just a list of events, it's a visual map of flow and weight. You'll change the priorities at the top to match yours, rearrange and delete as you need. So first you would put up into this row your big buckets of work. And until you fill in the big buckets of work, we won't do any estimation. So you fill in your big buckets first, and then you'll do your estimation. So this is a capacity calendar that I put together just for you guys to see here. And you'll see I put big buckets across the top with priorities for, say, a small shop nonprofit executive director with board meetings, operational work, different pieces like that. So the first thing you do is you fill in the pieces. So For example, I put in my board meetings. I put in fundraising work that I'm going to do. And then as you're looking at that, then you can then go back and do the animals. So use your capacity calendar to review your year. It's a big picture, it's not detailed. So in this example, you'll notice that this executive director in their big buckets happens to have in October an annual audit, a pickleball tournament as their signature event, and they're heading into year-end appeal. Here's where you could look at and say, well, perhaps I can't easily move the pickleball tournament, but I can probably pretty straightforwardly move the annual audit. I can move the annual audit earlier into the year where I still can leave time for myself to do the prep work, but that it's not stacked directly on top of my other big elements of the pickleball tournament and then the year-end appeal of multiple elephants in the role. The reason you want to spot risk and rebalance is too many horses will equal team exhaustion. Snakes will give you creeping overload. One big elephant does need that space. And if you have no mice at all, that means you have no quick wins. So a little bit about getting to understanding what is a snake and how to remove these known risks that pull you off course or damage your efforts. So when you know you have a snake, you want to break down the snake in the ways that we talk about in this slide so that you have visibility into the issues. This means that you want to make the scope visible. You want to identify decision points early. And then you want to figure out a way to fold that work into something that's already moving instead of letting it kind of sit alone, like an odd loose thread no one keeps track of. So for example, you've decided, let's just clean up our database, our donor database, before we head into year-end giving. At first glance, that sounds easy, but actually it's quite complex. It's going to cross over multiple departments. It's going to take lots of effort. So to get that uncoiled, we want to figure out what counts as clean. We're going to break that into steps. That means we're going to remove duplicates. We're going to update contact info. We're going to tag our different segmentations. We are going to identify our interdependencies. Who has access to the data? Who needs to do what by when in order for these to happen? And then give it a nice time box. Say you're going to work on this 2 hours a week, every week, and you're going to stack it into, because it's your donor database, this stacks neatly into your monthly development meeting. So you can review data progress as a standing agenda item. It belongs here, it makes sense here. So by uncoiling that working and stacking it into what's already in motion, you've now taken what was an invisible risk and now turned that into more of a rhythm for your work. So my guidance for you is to not count all work as equal. Use the capacity calendar and the estimation animals to make your work doable in the day-to-day and durable for the long run. And you can just try it with one task at a time until you get comfortable with it. And then I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.